in microbiology and took an elective course in nutrition at Northeastern University and said, yeah, this is way more interesting. So where can I go? And I was lucky enough to be in the Boston area, which is kind of one of the hubs, and went to Simmons College. Simmons College had a bachelor's degree program in nutrition. And it was a wonderful education that I got. And of course, at that time, you always tracked to internships. That's kind of the way you went back then. And Boston was very, very competitive. It was one of the hubs of where people would try to get in. So to hedge my bets, what I did is I went after the internships that had a master's degree at the same time, and was lucky enough to get into Boston University with an internship at New England Deaconess Hospital, which is now part of Beth Israel. And that was an incredible learning experience because pretty much everyone at New England Deaconess, all patients had diabetes plus something else. So they were, New England Deaconess is where the Jocelyn Clinic is. So you had a very, very good core course of clinical nutrition, but that was not really my focus. I was one of the renegades with one other person. Her name is Nancy Sambach, and she is at National Dairy Council. She and I were the renegades who went against the grain and took nutrition education instead. And I'm so glad that I did that. From that time, the thought was go into hospitals, go into clinical. And I want to preface this that all throughout my high school years and in my undergrad college years, I worked in food service. So when it came time for our internship for the exam, I was the point person on how many cups are in a number 10 can. This is what braising means. So I had that whole background in food service because of all the jobs that I had worked in nursing homes, backing house kitchens, et cetera, et cetera. So I had a big background in food service, which actually helped me for my next job because I could not land a job in the early 80s as a clinical dietitian. It was just locked up, and I had moved out of the Boston area. I ended up working for a very interesting company. I worked for the American Dairy Association for New England. And what I was the director of food service. So my job was to promote dairy products, specifically New England dairy products, with the emphasis of getting restaurants, colleges, schools to use New England dairy products. So I did that for about 10 years with marketing. And that's where I kind of got my start on the marketing side, kind of ran that course with a whole kind of glass ceiling situation, and ended up going to work for what's called a food broker, Pinnacle Food Brokers. A food broker is a company that represents several different manufacturers and tries to get food service distributors, restaurants, chains, et cetera, to use, for example, Campbell's soup, which is what I would do, versus Heinz, to sell the benefits of it. And one of my jobs was the resident dietitian for that company, the spokesperson for vegans and vegetarians, healthcare, et cetera. But my job did involve selling several different products, some that I believed in and some that I did not. My largest customer was a company called PFG, or Performance Food Service. I did that job for 22 years, and a opportunity came up. At the same time, I was getting disenchanted because I really wasn't using my nutrition education. I had started learning clinical. Certainly I could use some of my nutrition education, and when we had something that was a product that was gluten-free or was meant for hospitals for or nursing homes with company or residents that had dysphagia. But I wasn't really using my full potential. And after 22 years, how do you go back? Well, what I ended up doing is I ended up studying integrative and functional nutrition. So I jumped forward and I did that on the side for about 2 years, and I continued to do that. And that really helped me in terms of coming up to speed, because many of the things I learned back in the 80s, as you all know, was a bunch of, we've gone past that now. All right. So what ended up happening is Performance Food Service they realized that they needed somebody who knew how to talk the talk of nutrition, but also understood the needs of a food service distributor, because they are in the business of selling products and making money, and understanding the needs of the salespeople as well as the customers, because they had been my biggest customer for 22 years. I knew inside and out all of their customers. So I knew what UMass Amherst needed. I knew, this salesperson is a top salesperson and goes after these type of accounts, and I knew what items to work with. So it was an easy fit. And they knew that they needed somebody who knew nutrition. They had no idea what I should do, how I should do it. So they said, Sue, we want you create the job. And that was 5 years ago. And that's what I did. They gave me pretty much carte blanche, because they didn't know if I was going to work with the purchasing department, the marketing department, the sales department. They had no idea where I would work. Comes to find out, I work with all of them. Every single department I work with. Where I started out, about 6 months into the job, we ended up taking on a very, very large healthcare group of nursing homes. And my job was to onboard them, which means to get everything set up, from helping the purchasing department to actually working with the accounts, training them on software. And that took up a lot of my time getting that on board. Had I not been there, there is no way that my company could have ever done it, because knowing the ins and outs of healthcare, how it's down to the pennies, and why you cannot use this product versus this product because this one's too high in sodium, or there's no program involved, there's not enough money in it, etc. They never could have done it. So I kind of proved my worth there. And that is, I do oversee that account and other healthcare accounts now. I have somebody underneath me that handles the day-to-day functions. But as you can imagine with COVID, literally, and when everything shut down, my accounts were some of the reasons that we still had trucks going out the door. Healthcare is 24/7, 7 days a week, and it's growing. So it's a big part of what we do. It's a big part right now of what a lot of my salespeople are doing, looking at how to increase their business. And again, it's an area that I had worked in for years, but had a lot of on-the-job training as well. And I got to say, healthcare software systems, very, very cool. I'm working with a few different ones right now. I'm starting with another one, and that's a really fun area that you don't necessarily think about, but it's really got a lot of different functions, not only from the nutrition side, but there's just a lot of variables. So that's a fun area. I'm also the one that's responsible for what's called K-12 kindergarten, all the schools. So public schools, private schools, there's a lot that goes on, and healthcare and public education are extremely similar programs in that they are both funded by the government, Health and Human Services, and both of them, their money that they get is extremely dependent on these accounts following the rules that are set by the government, which are based on the USDA guidelines for dietary guidelines. So you all know that we have an update coming up on the dietary guidelines, and I'm really hoping a lot of things change, because some of the regulations that schools and skilled nursing facilities have to follow are antiquated guidelines that are based on the dietary guidelines from 10 years ago. If they do not follow those guidelines, they don't get money, period, end of story. They lose their funding. So that's why it's really important, and you have to have a good knowledge base of all of those different regulations. And they do differ state to state. So that's something that's part of what I do, is know from state to state what the guidelines are for everything from a summer feeding program. You can use this cracker, you can't use this cracker, or you don't get paid. How much water a healthcare account has to have per resident per day in an emergency, that kind of stuff. So a lot of what I do has to do with all of those regulations. Where I picked up a lot of those regulations is from my time being a food service broker, because one of the benefits, as you can imagine, of a whole grain goldfish cracker is that product can be used in schools and they get reimbursement. So it's a selling point. So there you go. So on the K-12 side, it kind of dovetails into a few other areas such as camps, and then also child and adult care feeding programs. So like Meals on Wheels programs, they are actually under more of the guidelines that you would see in schools versus healthcare. So it's really kind of an interesting and growing group. One of the other things that I do with schools is that they get a lot of commodity products where the government says, hey, you have access to this amount of chicken. What do you want that chicken made into? Do you want nuggets? Do you want tenders, etc.? If you go with Tyson, then you will get $10 or $15 off a case going through PFG if you use this product. The reporting of doing that falls on me, working with the schools plus the government, USDA, and it is extremely convoluted. I had to set that up. That was one of the other things that I had to do. But my favorite thing to do is college and university. That is my favorite area to work in. And that's where Michelle and I met. What I do in college and university is I work as a specialist there. So all of our colleges and universities, and we have UMass Amherst, we have Dartmouth, Johnson & Wales, Cornell, Ithaca College, Amherst College. We have a Brown University. So we do a lot of colleges and universities. And where I come into play is on the very, very important side of either diets, special diets, whether it's kosher, halal, vegan, and probably the most important side is allergens. That is really my wheelhouse that I deal with daily, because as you all know, allergens and food sensitivities are on the rise. And so a lot of what I do is help my colleges and universities, identify allergens so that they can flag them in their software system, social media, and in point of sale, so that for students, so that they can work with their allergens and not have any issues. also identifying products that'll work. I just got an email right before this that Dartmouth College is working for their winter program for um, delivery meals. They are looking for products that do not have any of the top 8 allergens. I said, of course, you don't want sesame as well, correct? So they said, yes. I said, this is going to be a tall order because right off the bat, you know, working with baking, say bakery products, almost always you run into eggs with bakery products. Even if everything else is, there's no soy, there's no dairy, so what do you do about your students where egg is an issue? So luckily, one of the things that is helpful to my colleges and universities is because I deal with Cornell, we just brought in a ton of new stuff that that we never had before in the building, that I can say, hey, you can't see this, but I know that we have this particular bread that Cornell is using that you guys can now tag on to. And so that's, bottom line, that's kind of where I fit in the best, is being able to be kind of what I call the Rosetta Stone of talking to not only our customers, but then translating that over to our purchasing department saying, hey, got news for you. Dartmouth is now going to start using this product. You're only bringing in, 3 cases a week for Cornell. Well, Dartmouth's going to use 20. So you need to up your par. This is what you need to bring in, et cetera, et cetera. And I tell the salesperson as well. So that's where I kind of fall in that regard. And because of everything that we've been doing on the college side, whether it is the allergen side or lifestyle, what I call lifestyle diet. So the whole flexitarian, plant forward that we see on the college and university side is now trickled to what we call the street. The street is our restaurants and multi-unit accounts, et cetera. So I've been working more and more with my salespeople with street accounts that are now saying, hey, I'm a 5-unit chain and I need to be able to offer more, we call it different things depending on what they want, but plant forward, plant centric. Let's see, another one that's big right now, paleo is really big right now. And then also identifying allergens. So I'm working with, again, different restaurant groups, helping them to develop plant forward, vegetarian and vegan options. And in addition, one of the other areas that I've been working with, because again, my marketing background, we've been working to help our customers and our sales force. I'm one of 5 specialists at my company. We have one for seafood, one for center of the plate. We have 2 corporate chefs, and we all work together to develop marketing materials, recipes, demos pre-COVID that we would do to promote either plant forward or to promote seafood, et cetera. And then finally, with that, I've been working a lot with training our salespeople, because if they don't know, if somebody asks them, do you have is this product paleo? And they have no clue what it is, they could lose the sale to somebody who does. If you go into a healthcare account and you don't know, some of the bullet points of what is important to them, they're not going to give you the time of day. So I've been much more involved in training in different areas and developing those too. So within my whole company, which is actually we have units out all across the country. I think I'm the only nutrition specialist that works in all of those areas. A lot of times a distributor will have a dietitian that works just in schools, in the school arena, or just in healthcare. Because of my background, again, I think from the broker side, I'm able to talk in all of them. So I think that's enough about me and my background. And
Amazing.
so let the questions begin.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. And you pointed out about distribution companies having dietitians. It's very rare for that to happen. So it's a pretty remarkable position.
Yeah, I think I mean some of our competitors are Cisco, U.S. Food Service, and quite a few of those have downsized so that you have to talk to their headquarters in Dallas or Baltimore, which is not really helpful for UMass, or a college that says, look, we're putting we had to make a change, and so we're putting instead of this breaded chicken, we're putting this breaded chicken on the menu. We need to know the nutritionals, and the specs only they're incomplete. So I need the specs, and I need them now because it's going on the menu tonight. And you have to call Dallas, which is 2 time zones away. Not really helpful.
Well, it definitely sounds like you have a full job for sure. And it sounds like it's grown since I last talked to you.
Yeah, it has. It's especially with COVID. Like I was not furloughed. Like we had furloughs for a short amount of time. I was the one specialist who was not because of healthcare and running this and that and the other. And it actually got busier because then you had to use all of we just had to really ramp things up because we've had issues of, for example, Heinz, huge shortages on ketchup, huge. Want to guess why?
The bottles.
Retail. Yeah. It's all going to supermarkets, and they don't have enough people to work in the factories for the little PCs. PCs are, and you can't get a vanilla wafer to save your life right now. And that is a big item in healthcare. We cannot get vanilla wafers. Cannot. I don't know what the deal is, but cannot get them. So my job is with our healthcare accounts is I said, take the vanilla wafers off the banana pudding, use the graham cracker crumbs, but it's that kind of weird stuff. You have to be able to kind of bob and weave. And it's hard if it's a core item. We had a big major issue with meats, that there was a spike where they couldn't get the when the plants shut down, we couldn't get, we had a supply issue. And so you're trying to look for an alternative, and now that alternative costs $3 a pound more. And you're dealing with a nursing home. It's like, you need to change your menu. Just for a little bit, change your menu, go to chicken.
Lots of soup. All right, we're gonna start with Madeline Gwynn. Go for it.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for coming out today.
Hi.
I had a question about suppliers. So how do you ensure that a supplier is dependable? Like, do you look into their past transactions before making business deals? Like, how would you go about that?
So there's a couple of things. We're finding that, with my company, our corporate vets different, national manufacturers. So we have a thing that's called private brands. So for example, we have our own brand of like tomato products. Before our label ever goes on, there are so many steps that companies have to go through in terms of food safety. There are several different rating systems that are independent rating systems. Silica is one. And so just from food safety, The nationals all have it. Let's say you're dealing with a local vendor. Okay, so we do a lot with local produce, etc. Our produce category manager he is the bomb. We just have the best produce, and you can imagine when we're dealing with universities as large as UMass, we can't have a little local farm that is not following to the nth degree with insurance, that they are meeting every food safety standard. That is not always the case with smaller food service distributors. So, and especially right now, I don't have to tell you guys, transparency is so important. I mean, and our customers are demanding that. That was one of the demands I know when we worked with Cornell. What is the transparency? How far can we go back? And we have a lot of transparency on a lot of our center of the plate. So our meats, pork, we can actually go back to the farm to track, where, when the animal was processed, where it grew up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have that on our seafood. Food safety is huge. And then also we do track what countries products are coming from. When I get nutritional specs, I'm looking for very specific things like, the calories and allergens. I can get specs on certain products. The thing is 23 pages long of all the testing that went on that product for metals, chemicals, bacteria, etc. So it's pretty amazing the amount of testing and transparency that is being demanded these days. So if there's ever a recall, we have a system that's called instant recall. So say there's an E. coli outbreak on a lettuce. We're notified and it immediately goes out to our customers if we are involved, if they have received product, and then we have to follow up with the customer and say, do you have it in your building? This is what you need to do about it. So it's pretty amazing. And I've been involved with a few of those recalls, and we haven't had issues because the lines of communication are so good from the producer all the way through to the customer.
Thank you.
Taylor.
Hello, Ms. Dion. My question is similar to Madeline's with dealing with different vendors and representatives for companies. How do you go about building rapport with these managers and spokespeople, and how do you maintain that connection and that trust?
So one of the ways is actually through the broker network. So what I used to do. So what happens is there's some long-standing relationships that are dictated because of brands that we need to carry. So we have certain brands like that are for the pizza trade, that we have been working with these manufacturers. Actually, some of them, like Leprino, they're actually tied in. They're another part of my company. But say you have somebody like a local bread company, because every part of the country has their own niches. What's going to work in San Francisco is not going to work in LA. So you have, your own, probably are dealing with your own bread company. So how does that come about? It's usually either by a food broker that represents that, we'll call it XYZ sourdough company, is represented by a broker, or they're represented by a manufacturer representative. Their job is to get a company like PFG to bring that product into the building to sell to customers. So it's very much a give and take. So for us, we have X amount of space in our building. So there has to be a reason for us to bring a product in. And the reason to bring a product in is that customers are demanding it. So again, if you were in San Francisco, it's like, you have to have sourdough. I mean, you have to. So you probably have like 3 different brands because, you know, and a major university may say, look, we want this brand. So you have to bring this in. So we would then talk to the representative or the broker for that particular bread and say, look, this is how much of this bread we need to bring in for this account. I'm sure that you, sourdough company, are also interested in selling us other products. How can we do that for you? And typically what happens is there's a lot of, there's the products, but then there's also a lot of times the manufacturers and the brokers participate in several different events to try to sell their product to our customers. So it's a very much a symbiotic relationship. Food shows, brochures, again, social media, rebates, etc. That's all part of the give and take on the manufacturer side. On our side, what we're looking for from a manufacturer is get your product here on time. Make it easy for us to bring it in and work with us in terms of if there's any issues. And it really is, that's why I was a broker rep for 22 years for PFG. They knew if it was one of my lines, I knew their system inside out and backwards. And that's not always the case right now, because in the broker world, to have somebody 22 years there, that's not really the case anymore. It's more of a turn and burn, as I call it, system. So, but that's the ones who are successful. The lines that are successful are the ones that have that symbiotic relationship. Plus they have the really good products too. So I hope that answers it.
Thank you, that was awesome.
Larissa, you're up next.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. And my question is, where did you gain the competencies in finance and business needed for the position as a broker? You kind of answered like how you are able to use what skills you gained and knowledge you gained as a broker, food service broker in your current position. But after completing the dietetic internship, like how were you able to do all that you did for 22 years?
So that's an interesting question. So part of it probably has to do with my personality. In high school, I was the class president, worked 35 hours a week at a nursing home, and was in the top of my class. So part of it is and I was voted most outspoken. So there's that. A couple of things really helped me. One, Simmons College, all girls school. Okay. All girls school, you're not going to get away with even thinking that you're not the best as a Simmons College student. My dietetic internship, all women, and I apologize to if there's any gentlemen here. Yes. So this is back in the 80s. Okay. So, and then probably the biggest thing that happened to me is when I went to go work for the American Dairy Association. That is a extremely male-dominated business. You're dealing with dairy farmers, very kind of old school, as were my bosses. We would go out to lunch. He would have 2 martinis at lunch. And yeah, this is back in the 80s. Think of kind of like Mad Men in the 80s. And you had to I had to justify my job because nobody understood food service. They understood buying milk at the grocery store, but they couldn't understand food service. And I had to prove to the dairy farmers every year why my program should be funded. And one of the ways that I did that was to show how it affected their bottom line. It affected the dairy farmers' bottom line. I had to give presentations all the time. I covered 6 states. So travel, actually as a broker, same thing, traveled all the time. When that helped me, but then when I went to, the only reason I went to be a broker was I was in line to be a pharmaceutical rep, 400 people down to 4. I didn't get the job because I didn't have enough sales experience. So I was just going to do this broker thing for a year and then go back and try to get into Abbott. Thank goodness I didn't. Because of the contacts that I already had with American Dairy Association, I had some inroads to start. I was the only woman for 3 years as a salesperson at my brokerage. So once again, an extremely male-dominated field with some really fantastic guys, a great, fantastic team. I can't say enough about the team I had that I worked with, and they gave me confidence. But you were presenting every single day. And the best thing I did, I knew my products inside out and backwards. I studied and studied and studied, even if it was French fries, which I was not thrilled about selling. But to this day, my company, even though I'm, the nutrition rep, anytime our new salespeople come in, I'm the one who does the turkey training because I was the Butterball lady for 20 years. I represented Butterball turkey. So you have met the Butterball lady. But even to this day, because I know the product so well, inside out and backwards, and that's really, if you know your stuff, you're going to be fine. It's just getting to that point, and it takes time. That's one of the things about being as old as I am, is that you have those years, and it's just experience. And there's things right now. I mean, I just went through something this week, brand new part of my company that we found a situation that it just wasn't an area I usually deal with. And I had to come up to speed really quickly and then translate it into my world. And I always ask for help. If I have no problem saying, I have no clue. This is not my wheelhouse. I don't understand it. Can you help me? And another thing that I've always done is what's called under promise and over deliver. Never promise somebody something you cannot deliver. If you say, well, this is what I think I can do, and then you do even more, it helps your reputation. And there's, times that early in my career that I messed up and didn't do that and under delivered. And I mean, this is way back when I was in college, and I still remember it. I mean, it was you just don't forget it when you maybe slack off and don't, and that's, I think, one of the things when you're studying nutrition, you tend to be a detail oriented person. I find in general, liking numbers, and that's a forte. And that's always been a huge help. Sometimes to my detriment. People say, oh my gosh, you're way too detailed. And I said, yeah, just wait. And sure enough, it'll come back of, yeah, aren't you glad I did that? So.
Great words of wisdom. I did, it's interesting that you mentioned Simmons, because they actually have a great master's in nutrition and health promotion. So if anyone's interested in pursuing, it's a very atypical program. I know a couple of people that have gone through that program.
I think Nancy Herbold might still be heading that up.
Okay.
I think she
It's
might.
still, it's not all girls anymore, is it?
No.
Oh,
No.
in case anyone is interested in the East Coast. Caroline.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if you could elaborate more on the specific challenges you've encountered when purchasing food to avoid having the 8 allergens, and then like any like significant solutions.
Yeah, so probably the hardest thing is keeping up with the nutritional specs. So, and I'm hoping that the government kind of catches up too. So some of the issues that we have are what I call the dreaded may contain. So I could have a product that, popsicles, okay? Popsicles are made, unfortunately, usually with high fructose corn syrup, an artificial dye. Maybe you'll be lucky and they use, sugar and fruit juice, all right? I have several different products like that I cannot use. Say I have the good ones, the fruit ones, that I could use with camps, can't use them. You know why? Because on the label it says, processed in a facility that may contain nuts, tree nuts, wheat, etc. The may contain is being used by major manufacturers to cover their butts because they are so worried about somebody suing them because of a reaction. But it doesn't help. It puts the onus, unfortunately, on the consumer and the student, because we really wrestle with this on the college side and again restaurants, because what do you do with that may contain? Do you know what I mean? So somebody who is, I'll give you a huge, this one is the one that drives me nuts, okay? So soy, all right? Soy allergies. The Soy Industry Council will swear up and down and sideways that you do not need to worry about soy fry oil because it's been so highly processed, there are no proteins left. Tell that to any college and university dietitian. Not gonna fly. I have no colleges, none, using soy oil. What do you do about salad dressing? Salad dressing, any type, it can be Ken's, it can be Marie's, is going to say, contains vegetable oil, parentheses, sunflower, canola, and or soy. Okay, so what do you do with that? So it makes that's very challenging. The worst one right now, I gotta say, is spices and natural flavors. I cannot tell you how many times a week I am on the phone with manufacturers calling them saying, look, I have a college that has 3 students with a sesame allergy. I need to know on this spice or this natural flavor profile, please tell me you do not use sesame seeds or black pepper. That's another one that's popped up. Black pepper. I have a onion and garlic one right now. Do you know how hard it is to find products, again, that are processed that do not have black pepper, do not have onion as a flavor? So it's extremely difficult. And probably the worst of all is I had a major manufacturer, tell me, we don't test for sesame. We don't need to. The government doesn't, we only have to test for the 8. So do you know what I did? I switched their product. Customer was using this particular soup base. I said, I can't guarantee this soup base. I've got another one for you that happens to be gluten-free. I've got all the testing. I've got all of this. Here it is for you. So I switched the business. So because I can, because of that knowledge of not, you want to be a manufacturer and not share with the class, you're going to lose, because you have to do that for Canada. You have to do it for the EU. So, and companies are getting much, much better at it. And they're, I'd love to tell you that they're 100% on board, but they can do some kind of wonky things. But again, with transparency, they're really, really having to really give more information. I dare say, I think sesame is coming. If COVID hadn't happened, I think we would have already seen that. And I think corn is going to be on the shelf too. I think we're going to have 10, not 8. Oh, and people not understanding that gluten isn't labeled as an allergen. That's another one. We go through that one all the time. Yes, no, even though it says gluten-free, if you're frying the gluten-free chicken tenders in the fryer-later, you just fried the breaded poppers. No, I actually had to do that with one of our chains. Yeah, I had to take every single item that they buy, over 350 items, and cross-reference. Does it contain egg? Does it contain milk? Does it contain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Went through all of that and said, so you have dedicated fryer-laters, right? No. I said, then what was the point of that? Because if you're frying this, you're going to cross contact. So yeah.
Cool, thank you.
I hope that answered that. You're welcome.
Yeah, it just is a reminder of how a dietitian's job is teaching external customers, internal, you've got to have your people internal know what's going on before they can go out to the customers, right, Sue?
Yeah. And then, and you don't always have to be a dietitian, because there's many different paths now. It's having that background, either undergrad or graduate in nutrition. And again, a lot of the manufacturers are looking for, they realize the need. So there is a huge demand on that side of the business, on the manufacturer side, for folks that have that background.
Well, that's good news
because
for
they realize
some food science here too. So
absolutely, and there's in terms of the food science side, my gosh, there's so many other issues that are going on there. The whole there's so many different things going on, but I'm thinking more of GMO and kind of that side of the equation is also another part of it as well. So I had a broker friend of mine that she was in the broker business, but she had started out as a food scientist or in food science. And about the same time that I came to PFG, she ended up getting a job back using her food science background, her undergraduate, after X amount of decades. And it was because of her, again, her experience in the food business, but then also having that core of food science, that she was able to go work for a manufacturer. So you never know, it can come full circle. Pretty interesting.
All right, we're up. Janelle is up next.
Hi, thank you for being here today.
Hi.
I was wondering, when you were a broker, were the companies that you sold to also interested in the sustainability side of products, such as like the production and how the product is made, the packaging of the product, and if that's compostable, etc.?
That has because it was a 22-year span in the beginning, no. It wasn't. Where we really started to see it, again, started it more, I would say more in the, I never know what you call it, from 2000 on. We really started to see, I would say in the mid of that decade, we started to see it a little bit in the college and university sector. And then I would say once we hit like the tens, you know, this past decade, and then it just went like, you need to know what you're talking about here. And I mean, the amount of products that that we have for, I mean, I can't even tell you how much training we get on, you know, from compostable, biodegradable, recycle, you know, I mean, it's the amount of products that are meeting that need now, which absolutely kills me with this whole COVID thing. Absolutely kills me, because you know, we're starting to see styrofoam having to come back, because of course everybody would like to use compostable or recyclable, or, you know, again, more what I call eco-friendly. When you have literally every restaurant now having to do takeout, we actually had to tell our colleges and universities, we said, look, if you think you're going to have students there, you need to gear up now. We were telling them in May, if you think that you're going to have students and you need your compostables, you need to get them now, because we are not going to have them. It was crazy. And then of course you get them all in, get ready, and then boom, your governor locks the place down, and then you go, stop making them. So yeah, but in terms of sustainability and like I say, and transparency, it's definitely become such a huge issue. It's like I say, I can't remember the last time. I mean, we have towns that were banned styrofoam, you know, and so our salespeople have, you know, had to like gear up real quick on trying, you know, accessing product. But definitely an exponential everywhere in the past, I would say the past 3 years for sure, but it was already on an upward climb. But then again, I'm based in the Northeast. I will tell you, other parts of the country, completely different. Throw that can on the side of the road, you know, it's not a big deal. I think it's, again, we see it college and university, I think the coasts, and certain other parts of the country. So it's variable. It depends on what part of the country you're in, whether it's a big deal or not.
Remind us, Sue, PFG is a national company.
Say again, Michelle?
PFG is national.
Yep, we're national. I talked to some of my counterparts, and they're like, you know, they're like, what are you talking about? What is that? I have no idea, you know, because they have the priority is different. So it's growing, but it's not, again, it's been prevalent with us in the Northeast and West Coast, I see more so than in, you know, certain other parts of the country.
Awesome. David R. Great question.
Hello, thank you for your time. So my question is, you know, with technology making it easier for companies or customers to make purchases and tracking and adjusting orders, what would you say are actually some of the challenges or drawbacks to such technologies?
I actually don't see drawbacks on it. Where the drawback is customers who are not as skilled at using those technologies. So for example, with the whole COVID thing that is going on, We have lots up in the Northeast, we have lots of independent little restaurants that are run, you know, that are owned by folks that are in their 60s, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, who have, you know, have no clue on how to do the outreach to get that takeout business that they now have to do, that they're depending on. And one of the things my company did is one of our specialists, he has a background as a chef. He's been a manager. He's run different companies, and he opened companies in New York City, or, you know, restaurants and stuff, and has an incredible working knowledge of menu development, training of employees, of everything from and I'm one of those people who is, I can talk about my software systems, but let me put it to you this way. I'm not on Twitter. My daughter has to tell me, okay, this is what Instagram is. All right. So I'm one of those people. That's why we brought in this specialist who helps the restaurateurs and those of us who are a little more challenged to be able to use those technologies, because it's just going to make everything so much better. You know, to have, you know, we still have customers where the sales rep goes in, you know, and takes the order. Okay. But we're finding much more that we're finding that folks, you know, restaurateurs or dietary managers, they want to do their own. You know, they want either going into our online system. They want to do it on their mobile phones to take inventory. That's what I encourage my healthcare people to do when they're doing inventory. Just do it on your phone, to write it, you know, on a piece of paper, and then no. You know, there's software systems that will take that inventory, turn it into what your order should be, down to the case, to help you to save money. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no downside except for getting everybody up to speed. And making sure, as with anything, you know, garbage, you know, info in, you know, garbage in, garbage out, as long as all of the info is up to date. And the reason I say that is I would love to tell you that every single specification on like say you wanted to see the nutritionals on a new Campbell's soup product. If they didn't put all the information in that you need, like maybe you need to know the gram weight because your software system for nutrient analysis runs everything in grams, and everything's been put in by ounces or by the each, that can be a little snag. That's probably the biggest snag I see, is on that, the nutritional specifications, because it's up to the manufacturer to put in all that data. Love to tell you they update it all the time and it's perfect. It's not. And it doesn't matter if it's a little guy, local guy, or if it's a national. It's just, it can be a little difficult to keep up. But I hope that answered that.
You know, all the information. Casey.
Hi. I was wondering what the hardest part is of trying to promote a product or something that you don't really believe in, and if you have a good example of that.
Oh, let me think, because I did have to do that. What I would look at is, I'll give you a good example. All right. When I do my turkey training, and I believe in Butterball as a company for what they do. Okay. I personally am a organic, you know, everything is either organic or non-GMO, et cetera. That's really hard to do when you're selling turkey sandwiches from a deli. It's too price prohibitive. So you have to have different layers. So when I look at a company like Butterball, which is actually doing more NAE, no antibiotics ever, they actually are what's called a vertically integrated company. So from top to bottom, they just have a lot of, for a large company, they've got a lot of good things going for them. Within their portfolio, they have, like I say, the ones that are the no antibiotics ever, you know, just shy of organic. But then they have what I call liquid turkey in a bag. It literally is that jelly kind of turkey roll kind of stuff. And it's the parts mixed with a bunch of fillers, a bunch of salt. Guess what? That's what some of my nursing homes use. Okay. So they use that product because why? Because they only get this amount of money from the government. It's all that they have to work with. So in that particular case, do I feel that that product, would I eat that? You know, do I like it? I don't, but it serves a purpose because otherwise they wouldn't have a protein source. So those type I can kind of put my head around because it fills a need. And what a college and university needs versus what a bodega or a I think of like Olive Garden versus like a high-end Italian. There's all different, there's going to be all different cheeses, all different meats, all different flours. The ones that are really hard for me are, you know, when I see something where it doesn't need to be that way. Why are you using high fructose corn syrup? You know, in those particular cases, if the customer says, you know, this is what I want because XYZ company is giving me a full salad dressing display if I use their product, have at it. That's great. If you want me to suggest what's a cleaner product, then I'm going to suggest a cleaner product. So having that product knowledge, trust me, there are times that as a dietitian, I go back and forth with some of my salespeople and chefs because, again, I'm a dietitian, and they're like, no, you know, this. Oh, I go back and forth with my meat guy all the time, and I'm not against meat, but there are certain ones I'm just like, no, you know, and by and large, I do have to say. One of the reasons that I like working for my company is the amount of products that I don't believe in are very few and far between. In that turkey line that I just told you about, in all of the turkey that we sell, that product that's not that I'm most happy about, it is a small percentage of what we sell. What we sell hundreds and hundreds of cases a week of are things like Old Neighborhood or the higher end Butterball, Mackenzie, you know, all like higher end, because that's what our customers are demanding. So what's really nice is we are seeing that customers are demanding that higher end, cleaner product, which is really exciting to see. And that trust me, when I started, it was opposite. It was, what's your price?
Have you ever vetoed an item, Sue? Have you ever vetoed an item?
Have I vetoed one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that power because, you know, they might ask my opinion, but the purchasing, you know, that's not part of my job description. So when we look at products, usually they've already been brought, or if I'm involved in cuttings, you know, pre-COVID, if the manufacturer was making a nutritional claim, and a lot of manufacturers try to do the healthy halo where they're saying, yeah, this is gluten-free. I'm like, yeah, raspberries are. You know, it's like inherently gluten-free. Don't put that, you know, don't put that on the label, you know, or, you know, they'll, if they make a claim that, you know, I'm just not buying it, you know, I call it out and I'm part of the team. So, but in terms of a final veto, I don't get to do that. But yeah, they don't, manufacturers don't necessarily like it when I'm in the room and they're trying to push something like, I'll give you the ones that drive me crazy right now, are all the plant-based burgers. There are some wackadoo ingredients in some of those products that I just look and I go, this is like Frankenfood. You know, it's like, do you realize how many soybeans you have to go through to make this product? And they're, you know, are they non-GMO? You know, and then how much water is being used for that? It's like, how about we go with, you know, a grass-fed, really great burger, use that sparingly, and that's the way we move forward. And we have that's a whole huge section. We just actually aligned with a bunch of local grass-fed beef suppliers here in the Northeast to be able to produce our Farm Smart grass-fed beef, which is humanely raised. And I would rather go that route than some of the plant-based or a good lentil burger rather than some of the foods that are coming out now. Some of them are better than others.
Brittany.
All right. Let me grab my question. But yeah, thanks for being here, Sue. It was really awesome to hear about sort of your journey to like this side of nutrition. I was actually just working on my Boston University MSDI application this morning. So that was sort of funny to hear that you went there.
Yep.
But my question was, how much of your job is sort of focused on like the various settings that you mentioned? Like what percentage of your day or week do you spend working on your accounts on college campuses versus hospital kitchens versus restaurants?
It changes. So I would say, I can have a week where I get only 1 or 2 calls from the colleges. And then I can have something totally blow up with my healthcare accounts. So like right now for today, I was pulling nutritional specs for 4 different colleges, looking at products for another college for those 8 allergens. My healthcare accounts were hacked by the Russians. None of them have internet. So we're trying to do their orders. My counterpart is handling that right now, and she's handling it by texting and sending pictures. So we're trying to work with them. Okay, what do you guys need for holiday turkeys? Here's what we have. Here's a picture. So, I mean, craziness. And I have a very, very, very large account that's going to be, it's a nationwide thing. But because of who I know, they want to get into healthcare and they need a healthcare software system. And they reached out to me. They said, do you know of one? I said, yes, I do. And so we're setting that up for the week after next. And that would be, really is more of like a national position, but we don't have anybody in my company that's a me at national. So this is kind of like a Northeast, because this company is based in the Northeast, they came to me. So like I say, it can be all over the place. And then I just, yesterday I was helping one of my salespeople. They have a school, huge school for autism. And this poor school is going to the local healthcare store, or, health food store. This is in upstate New York. And they're buying like all of these products, paying a huge amount of money. And, it's like, how can we help them? And so part of, again, on the autism spectrum, you're kind of still, you're still looking for the cleanest possible product. You're trying to avoid, preservatives. You're trying to go whole grain. You're trying to go whole grain and gluten-free. And so I worked with the salesperson to say, look, this is what we have that we can access. This is how you do it. It's going to be a special order. My suggestion is to order this much. And we went through the whole list. So, and I have, and then I have next week, I'm chatting with marketing on our next seafood magazine. So every day is different. It's never, I go through weeks like halal is my life right now. Kosher is not halal. Do you all know what halal is? Halal is the Islamic, where you follow the dietary tenets of Islam. And I don't know why all of my colleges, all of us, the students are just asking a lot more questions on, hey, we need more products. So that's been very interesting. So week before, everything was kosher. We need this kosher product or that kosher product, or one of my healthcare accounts needs gluten, a bunch of gluten-free and vegan products for their nursing home. So, and you might wonder, like, really? People are vegetarian and go in nursing homes? So on the nursing home side, say I needed a hip replacement and my house was not set up for me to go home. I would be going to a nursing home for 2 weeks. I would be everybody's nightmare for 2 weeks. But, that's why we're seeing, you just never know where those things are going to come in. And that was actually another thing that I did with my job that has come to be one of the things that has been a lifesaver for a lot of people, is that when my salespeople go in on their computer and go to look up what we have that's gluten-free in the building, they do not see everything that's gluten-free. So for example, cornmeal is not going to flag gluten-free. It happens to be inherently gluten-free, but they don't know that. So they have a customer that says, I need to know what's gluten-free in the building. Well, they're seeing hundreds of customers a week. They don't have the time to do that, nor do they have the knowledge. So what I did is I went through the products that are in our building, and I maintain a database of gluten-free, dairy-free, vegetarian, vegan, kosher, halal, nut-free, whole grain items for K-12, and I've built these out over 5 years. And somebody had started with them many years ago, and they said, if you can ever pull this off, this is going to be like crazy. And people don't realize they need it until they need it. And then when they need it, they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And it's been a real selling point for my company because other distributors don't do that. And every single one of those items I have vetted. I have checked it, whether it's gluten-free, certified gluten-free facility. I work with, I had to do a lot of work with Kitchens with Confidence, Michelle, this summer. So dealt with, dealt with Betsy. Yeah. So, and really, I really couldn't have done a lot of this to this degree if I hadn't been studying integrative and functional nutrition. That has been a huge, huge help to me. And I still continue with that. So you wouldn't think it would help me in this side, but it does.
Great questions, Greta. We have about 17 minutes, Sue. So a few more questions.
Yep.
You keep plugging away. Greta, do you have your question ready?
Yeah. So regarding your work with K-12 schools, is there, like, I know obviously in the same state there's probably going to be similar dietary guidelines, but is there a major difference in just what kinds of budgets public versus private schools have and that effect on like the purchasing?
Yeah, so even within public schools, depending on where they're located, if they're, it's funny, they can be what are called universal, where every kid gets a free, gets a free breakfast and lunch, and that's actually a better budget to work with because everything is being funded by Health and Human Services or the government. There are private schools do not have the same, they don't usually have the same restrictions that public schools do, unless they decide to, like we have a private school, we have a few private schools. One of them really acts more like a community college, or they're more like the college setting because they have a much larger budget. I mean, if you're dealing with a private school where it's $35,000 a year to go there, you're probably not going with whole grain goldfish. You know what I mean? It's going to be much more expansive. If it's a same private school that is doing a summer program that is funded, funded by the government, then they do have to do that. We have an interesting situation right now where one of our universities is doing the food service for a public school because they're able to do the grab and go meals because the school system is doing, everything's remote. So they didn't have the staff and the funds, so they contacted the university, and we had to bring the university up to speed of, you can't use that hamburger bun for them because it's not whole grain. You have to use this one, and here, this is the one that we have. The other thing that's going on with K-12 is that there were guidelines that keep changing, and under the Trump administration, they just relaxed some guidelines. So you don't have to be whole grain all the time, for every meal. But again, it'll be interesting to see how it's going to change under, when the next dietary guidelines come through, and what's going to be the next. The sodium one is the one that freaks everybody out because the goal for sodium is unattainable. As much as we would like to, it is totally unattainable. You would not be able to serve bread. That's how unattainable, because they're not taking into account, the leavening agents that contain sodium in it. But the other thing with schools, though, is that K-12 schools, public schools, get tons and tons. They get a lot of help from the government, from not only the commodity products I told you about, but they get monthly. They get what's called brown box, which is another part of the government. It's usually through the military. So it's things like, hey, for the military, we have, in the state of Massachusetts, we have an overabundance of carrots. We've got, 2.5 million pounds of carrots this month to give away for free. Do you want them? How many can I send to you, Milford schools? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of other things that come into play. And certainly the other thing that happens with schools is they tend to be part of a buying group or a co-op that helps to bring their costs down too. Same in healthcare. They're usually part of a buying group. So yeah, private schools, way more money. Think more college. And the trends are the same too. I would say trends are definitely more like as college freshmen on the upper end of. But we used to do I did a FA bowl demonstration for a private school that went from sixth graders, like sixth graders up through 12. Went over very well. So yeah. wouldn't be able to do the same. In public school, probably not.
They're getting so sophisticated. Megan.
Hi, Sue. Since you work with a lot of people and a lot of diets, I would love to know your personal opinion on fad diets such as paleo or keto. Is there any diet that you have negative opinions about?
Well, I think one diet does not fit all. And you definitely look at the research. I mean, there are folks, it's funny, during my internship, I was at Children's Hospital and I worked with ketogenic diets for children with epilepsy and seizures. And working with MCT oil, it's the most god awful. Oh, it was horrible. Poor children. I mean, for taste, it was great for them treatment wise, but things that aren't sustainable, or the celebrity ones kill me, when it's like, I really look at the research on it. I think there are some benefits to paleo, and but I'm waiting to see the research. There's some, there's short-term benefits on keto. How to live on that your whole life? You have to be, and to function socially. I think that it's. I know people who do it, but boy, it's tough to do. It's very tough. Paleo, I think, is easier. But it's funny. I do a whole talk on lifestyle diets, and I'm just really firmly convinced on flexitarian. The Mediterranean diet has scientific studies to back it up. It'll be interesting to see. I've just always studied what's the latest science, and look at those. But you have to. It has to be a lifestyle. It can't be a diet. And what works for one person is just absolutely not going to work for somebody else. It's funny, looking at it, like intermittent fasting. How does that work for somebody? It's really interesting to look at that with folks that have type 2 diabetes. Well, compound that if you have thyroid issues, like maybe not, or adrenal issues, like may not work. So you have to really kind of look at it. I'm trying to think if there's one particular right now that's driving me crazy. And so
Like raw vegan.
Huh?
Raw vegan.
That one kind of bothers me a little bit, because there are some, like where the nutrients, you're better off when it's cooked. I mean, I'm thinking of tomatoes, for starters. I have to say, here in the Northeast, I would be really hard pressed to eat raw. It's 20, 0 degrees outside. I would be having a problem with that. But I just think you can kind of miss some things on that one, and kind of miss out on some nutrients on raw. But anytime there's more vegetables anywhere, less sugar, more veggies, I'm all for it.
Thanks, Megan. Anna?
Hi. You've given a ton of great advice already, so I was wondering if you had a little bit more about how you mentioned how procurement has changed a lot since the 80s until now. What advice do you have for us if we end up going into this field with not only COVID, but just in general changes that will probably happen within the next few decades?
In procurement. Well, I can tell you one of the things that I've seen in all of this time is that I'm really happy about is way more diversity. whether it's just across the board, young, old, male, female, race, etc. I'm just seeing way, way, way more diversity. So, you know, I wouldn't worry about that because that's something that's really exciting. You know, I'm thinking of my purchasing department, and yeah, all age groups, everything. So that's really exciting. The technology is definitely going to help. Global is it's it's funny. It's local and global. You have to look at both. It's going to be really interesting post-COVID to see what happens in food production, because I do. It's such a, so the way that purchasing works right now, they move to this model of just in time. So we look at, say, all, like our buyers are doing this right now. So they're looking at all the cheese that they think that they need for this week, and they're going to put their order in, or let's say their meat order. These manufacturers will make the product to order. Okay, so what happens if something in the pipeline gets shut off, like say Chinese tariffs? So now we can't get, we have this one going on right now with aluminum cans, right? There's not enough aluminum. So we had where raw product, oh, it was something crazy, black olives, okay? Black olives, there was a production issue and we could not get black olives, and there weren't enough black olives. You know, everything had been allocated in California. Okay, so what happens when that's something like milk? So you've got these big giant conglomerates that are all like in the Midwest, and then all of a sudden something happens in the Midwest. So I think you're going to see a change of things going back a bit, coming back a little more production in the US and a little more local. And I think COVID or not, you know, post-COVID, the customer is demanding. I mean, if I told you in terms of like Kellogg's, General Mills, all of those companies trying to find a way to keep their shares up, what they're doing is they're buying companies like, you know, West Soy or, you know, Cascadian or what have you, to meet the needs of what the consumers are wanting. Again, the more, you know, local, sustainable. Is that everywhere? It's not everywhere, but it's coming. So I would see there's going to be a change to more local. Definitely the transparency, that's just going to continue to grow, because the consumer is going to want to be able to scan the, you know, the QR and see exactly where their product came from. So I think there's going to be more of that due diligence that purchasing agents are going to have to do in looking to be able to source and to be able to communicate that. I think eventually it's going to be, you scan and, you know, all the ingredients. I think that's going to be something that really has to be much more transparent, and the technology needs to keep up with it. It needs to keep up like in real time, you know, because I think, again, the consumer is going to drive it. The consumer is going to drive it. I mean, at some point COVID will pass. And but even with COVID, what's happening is a lot of people are thinking of their immune systems, so they're trying to eat healthier and cleaner. Excuse me, just for their health. And again, I'd still go back to whatever it is, wherever your niche is, and there's definitely a niche. Things are definitely becoming more niche oriented. Like I say, when I first started, we didn't have a seafood specialist, a non-food specialist, a chemical specialist, a you know, software specialist. We didn't have all of that, but we need it because, again, what works for the customer you know, if they can order online and they can get the software, what is it that you're going to offer? You're going to offer your expertise that no software system can do. For example, saying, hey, I know that this customer used this gluten-free product. It performs fantastically. You should try this one. No computer, no software system is going to be able to say that. So still, I would say knowing your products well, or what you do, whatever systems well, that, and being able to communicate it. And again, you can do that. It's a double-edged sword. If you know what you're talking about, then you feel good about talking about it. So that would be my long-winded advice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for giving us your words of wisdom and so much information about your background and career path too. It's been really helpful and gives a good sense of the procurement world to these guys. So we really appreciate you joining us, and thank you for all of your time.
Oh, great. I was happy to do it. Good luck to you all. Good luck, and stay safe. So
Thank you,
thank
Sue.
you.
Thank you.
All right,
So
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.